Caste diversity in films skyrocketed last year, according to the latest inclusion report from UCLA. People of color and women made tremendous strides among film leads since the last report, cementing 2020 as a watershed moment for diversity, the study says. For the first time, both groups nearly reached proportionate representation among film leads. And while 2020 was certainly Hollywood's most atypical year in terms of how films were released, the report concluded that it was the industry's most successful year on the diversity front. UCLA's 2021 Hollywood Diversity Report, co-authored by sociologists Darnell and Ana-Christina Ramón, is the latest indication that Hollywood is in the midst of a diversity sea change. The report also looked at diversity within the ranks of film writers and directors, and here too found significant gains for women and minorities. We've been systematically looking at these key job categories and comparing the representation of women and people of color to the all-important bottom line for 8 years, and it's encouraging to see skyrocketing numbers this year in front of the camera, said Hunt, dean of UCLA's Division of Social Sciences and a professor of sociology and African American studies. Unfortunately, the progress hasn't been nearly as meaningful behind the camera, particularly in the executive suites where white males still dominate the green lighting decisions. The report, which examined the 185 top-grossing English-language films released domestically in 2020 via theaters and streaming services, found that the black share of all speaking roles rose to 19.4%, up from 15.7% a year earlier, marking the third year in a row for which the group was overrepresented, when compared to the black percentage, 13.4% of the U.S. population. People of color, who collectively account for about 43% of the U population, exceeded proportionate representation for the first time, accounting for 42% of all roles in the films surveyed. The share of roles for all the other racial and ethnic groups surveyed also increased last year, though most are still underrepresented in movies as a proportion of the population. Latinx performers were cast in 5.7% of all film roles last year, up from 4.6% the year before. They make up nearly 18% of the population, however, and remain the most underrepresented group in Hollywood, despite the fact that as moviegoers, they were significantly overrepresented in 2020, accounting for 29% of the tickets sold. Asians were cast in 6.5% of all roles last year, up from 5% in 2019. They account for nearly 6% of the US greater than population. Multiracial actors got 8.5% of the roles in 2020, up from 6.2% the year before. They make up slightly less than 3% of the population. Middle Eastern and North African MENA performers were cast in 1.3% of the roles in 2020, up from 0.7% in 2019. Their percentage of the population is more difficult to accurately determine because the